It's such a pleasure to be holding, once again, another book by the one and only Mandy Wiener. This time, it's The Deal, Inside the Talks That Shaped South Africa's Future. And let me tell you, this is one of those books that you read that is, it's real. It's, you know, put politics to the side, even though it is about politics, but you actually get to hear and see the story behind the story that we covered. I'm sitting with Mandy. We're down the road from the SABC, and it's just such a pleasure to be chatting to you and to have sort of almost finished the book. I'm going to be blatant. There's a lot to cover in here, but it's unbelievable. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And so quick.
Yeah, I worked very, very hard. I did lots of interviews. I interviewed over 25 politicians. It worked out to almost 100 hours of interviews. And I managed to do it in just over a year or so since the GNU was formed. But I felt that it was important to do for South Africans, that this is a record of history for posterity. And all of these negotiations took place behind closed doors, and we have a right to know what happened there.
And you know, as South Africans, I think sometimes we don't realize we have a right to know, because this is our future. This is what when we went to the polls back in 2024, that was what we asked for. We wanted change. And so how the change unfolded and what happened is what we now find out in this book. So I want to talk about this because, and obviously the thing you've been quite vocal about is the fact that you managed to only get the president almost days before this went into publication. And I'd hate to have known what it was like to publish this without getting his word on it. So tell us about that.
So I'd finished the book. It was completely finished. It was about to go to print. And I'd been trying for a year. Every single day I would send a message to Vincent Magwenya, the president's spokesperson, and say, it's really important, this is his legacy, we need to speak about this, I have to include him. And I felt that the book would not be the full story without the president, because he was obviously central to the formation of a government of national unity. And then late one evening, I got a message from him saying, 11 o'clock tomorrow morning, get Tsidi, my late colleague Tsidi Madia, to stand in for you. I can't get you another time. And I met him at his foundation. He gave me about 80 minutes, and he just sat and answered questions and told stories. And I think that was the final piece in the puzzle. This entire book was like a jigsaw puzzle. I had to piece together the timeline, the events, get all these different narratives, weave them together, and I could finally finish the jigsaw puzzle.
Something was different about these elections. Something felt different. It wasn't the same. And when those results started coming through and the predictions started coming through, the disbelief in not only the journalists covering it, but the politicians, and that's what you cover. Talk to us about that disbelief of everybody when those results started coming in.
I think it was real shock for the ANC particularly. The president told me that he said it felt like he was watching a horror story when he was watching the results come out. Nomvula Mokunyane spoke to me about how she felt that she had been betrayed by people in the ANC, and she ended up having to go for counseling. And all of the politicians that I interviewed speak about the real shock.
And you did get this interview with the president, and not many people get an interview with the president. That's the problem with the president, is he doesn't like to have media interviews. This was a different kind of interview, though, and you weren't holding him account to anything, and I suppose that's why he was happy to speak. But the one thing about the president is, and what we have noticed, is that poker face he has. Everything looks calm and cool, and he looks like he's got it under control. You even speak about him going fly fishing or something.
Oh, so he tells the story about going fly fishing with Rolf Meyer during the CODESA negotiations.
So that was the CODESA negotiations.
And then I drew the comparison to his meeting with John Steenhuisen.
Over a bottle of wine.
So I call that chapter Fly Fishing at Maklamba and Ndlovu.
I love it.
Because he had this very poignant meeting with John Steenhuisen when the deal was about to fall apart. And John Steenhuisen went to go see him at Maklamba and Ndlovu, and he took a bottle of Nick and 40's Epicenter from Sarensburg Estate to kind of as a peace offering. And Ramaphosa took Steenhuisen out to show him the vista over Pretoria, Madiba's favorite view. And Ramaphosa describes this as a mellowing moment between the two of them. But then he goes on to explain about how he felt that he never had the same relationship with Rolf Meyer and with Steenhuisen, that it was lacking in the magic. Steenhuisen believes that Ramaphosa is capable of a hard pull, but that he has a very thin skin. So that's always the concern in the relationship, is that there's no magic like there was during CODESA.
There was a masterstroke on his behalf. Did you feel that when you came out of talking to him?
Yes, to an extent, and I'll tell you why. Is that the DA was very concerned about the fact that Ramaphosa was employing this tactic of running the clock down. So Tony Leon often speaks about how they constantly delayed meetings, they were late for meetings, they didn't show up for meetings, and they were running the clock down until the DA had no time left to negotiate. And that's exactly what happened on the 14th of June, is that they had to make concessions that they did not want to make, because otherwise it would all fall apart. So under enormous pressure from business, from the markets, from investors, from citizens, they agreed to a deal that wasn't ideal.
Yeah.
And when I asked Ramaphosa about this, I said, "Did you run the clock down?" And he giggled and he said, "Thank you."
You managed to sit down with John Steenhuisen and Helen Zille. Who really ran the negotiations? Was it John or Helen?
It was the negotiating team.
Do you really think so?
Yeah, so look, this is very nuanced. And one of the complaints that Ramaphosa had was that he never knows who he's dealing with in the DA. That's, you know, he alludes to the two centers of power. So John Steenhuisen was not involved in the negotiations. And this was a big issue within the DA. There was a lot of internal turmoil within the DA negotiating team, because what happened was Helen Zille wasn't initially supposed to be in the negotiating team. The DA FedEx decided that she should be. And this is the real friction point between the ANC and the DA, is that the DA thinks that they are the senior partner in the coalition. And that's why the ANC should be speaking to them about policy issues and about all sorts of things, whereas the ANC says the DA is not the only member of this coalition. It's a GNU. There's 11 members or 10 members now.
I mean, as you say, there are other partners, and I'll bring up one quite comic partner in all of this, and I can call him comic because, you know, we see him that way, and I'm talking Gateon McKenzie of the PA. And so, I mean, he comes in with very funny stories and gives a very human element in terms of what you've tried to achieve through this, is hearing the human story to tell through politicians. But, I mean, he talks about the fact of when he gets the call and he's in a movie and he jumps over people to try and get out and all of that kind of stuff, which is what I loved about the book, is that you bring in the human and humour side of politicians. But talk to me about Gateon McKenzie, because now there's threats that he wants to maybe leave the GNU. I don't know if that'll happen. I don't know if he would want to let go of the power, to be honest with you, because he seems to have quite a lot of power at the moment. Is he a surprisingly shrewd negotiator who understood how to leverage his position?
Yeah, he has a lot of respect for Ramaphosa, and he says as much in the book. But at the same time, he is unashamedly there for the power. He says anybody who says that they're not in politics for power is talking nonsense, in a more colourful language, obviously. And he also recognises that the ANC needs the Patriotic Alliance's cover in the GNU. Otherwise, it looks like a coalition with the DA. So he says if the Patriotic Alliance is there, he's loud, he's outspoken, a largely coloured party, and that's, by the PA being in the GNU, it gives the ANC cover. So I think he feels that it's important that they are retained. At the same time, the PA and the DA do not like each other. So his suggestion that the Patriotic Alliance is willing to work with the DA is very interesting, because I'm not sure the DA is rushing to work with the Patriotic Alliance.
Yeah.
That was one of their red lines, was that they didn't want the Patriotic Alliance to come in at all.
You sat down with the EFF as well, and I mean, you got their version of events.
Well, I tried.
Did you not manage to actually physically?
So I spoke to Advocate Leanne
Yeah.
SC, who now is with MK, but at the time he was with the EFF and was the lawyer for Jacob Zuma. I tried to speak to Julius Malema. I've tried through his lawyer. I tried through the formal channels. Floyd Shivambu declined my interview. I asked him if he would change his mind, and he said he would not change. I will not be changing my mind.
Was he at the MK at the time?
Yes.
But not that he's even there anymore.
Yes, he was.
Okay.
So I tried through both the EFF and the MK to get them to speak, because I felt that that was an important part of the story too.
The big voice in all of this and the big disruptor was the MK party. And obviously Zuma's shadow was hanging over all of this. you obviously didn't manage to sit down and
I did try.
Of course you did, but I mean these are difficult voices to get in. But it wasn't that difficult to write on what was going on at the time, because nobody foresaw. I don't know. I certainly didn't. Maybe in ignorance, but the fact that the MK party did what they did during those elections, that was the disruptor second to none.
I think some of the pollsters saw it, and we weren't quite sure what to make of it. And in the end, the polls were pretty accurate. But I think the real shock for the ANC was how there were ANC people that were working against the ANC in favor of MK. So Nomvula Mokonyane speaks about how there were literally ANC people wearing ANC regalia, T-shirts, going into the polling station and voting for MK because they genuinely believed that they wanted to restore the ANC of Zuma, and by doing that they'd be voting for the ANC. And there were people within the ANC structures who were encouraging people to vote for MK, and she felt that that was a real betrayal.
There's one aspect that perhaps we need to look at as well, is the pressure from business. Because there are those silent role players. As much as we call them silent, they're not silent, because you're looking at business leaders, markets, foreign diplomats. They must have had massive weight on these negotiations as well.
So I speak a lot about the bilaterals that took place, about how the ANC ran the negotiations, but also about the back channels. And you can't underestimate the impact of the back channels. So there were formal negotiations, and then there were informal negotiations.
Yeah.
And a lot of very big businessmen in this country were involved in the back channels. They were intermediaries, they were envoys, they were trying to lobby the various political parties. And both the ANC and the DA negotiators speak about how they were under enormous pressure from business leaders. They knew both parties had leverage when it came to the markets, the rand. The DA was under big pressure from the markets to take a deal with the ANC. The ANC was under pressure, and in fact Ramaphosa tells me about a meeting he had with business where several senior business people met with him, and he had a go at them. He said to them, well, you have been decampaigning the ANC, you've been funding other parties, you've been bad-mouthing South Africa, you go talk to the DA and get them to come to the table and make a deal. So he does speak about that and how he dealt with it.
You take all of these different role players, you put them together, and you talk about the fact that this is, in a way, a very dysfunctional marriage. But it was a marriage that managed, it's almost like a reality show that managed to happen in 14 days. It's unheard of when you look at what's happening around the world and what has happened in previous sort of governments of national unity to find these things. I mean, it could take years. This happened in 14 days, and I don't think we as a country must ever forget that.
And it's so important that we remember, because we saw a very peaceful transition from the 6th administration to the 7th. We saw the ANC effectively losing power and a unity government coming in, and all of these negotiations taking place firstly in 14 days to get the president elected, and then another 14 days until the cabinet was announced. In other countries, it can take a year and a half for a coalition to be reached. And look, our process is flawed. There needs to be a change in legislation. But I think what we achieved as a nation in such a short period of time, that is democracy at work. And we should be celebrating that.
Yeah, we certainly should. There's many things that we should be celebrating, and we have. And I think it's going to be an interesting future. And I just, well done for covering it in the way that you have.